Chapter 1. My father-in-law, mother-in-law, and sister-in-law all suffered catastrophic heart attacks at the same time. Cardiac arrest. All three of them. Not only did I not call my wife, the so-called surgical prodigy, for help, I just stood there and watched the life drain from their eyes. In my last life, when their hearts gave out, I called her, begged her to come home to save them. But she was busy. Her childhood friend had appendicitis, and she had to be the one to perform the surgery. After I pleaded again and again, she finally delegated the appendectomy and came back. She saved her family, no problem. But her friend, left in the hands of a clumsy intern, bled out on the table from a routine procedure. She blamed me for his death. All of it. To make me pay, she waited until I was asleep, then she shattered the bones in my legs with a hammer. She dragged me to his grave and forced my head against the cold stone. "If you hadn't called me, would Caleb be dead?" she screamed, her voice raw. "You were just jealous. You want him gone. God, you're so pathetic." The pain was unimaginable. I died right there, bleeding out on the freshly turned earth of her lover's grave. Then I opened my eyes, and I was back on the day her family's hearts decided to quit. The hospital was sterile and quiet. My father-in-law, mother-in-law, and sister-in-law were laid out on gurneys in front of me, perfectly still under white sheets. Looking at the three bodies, I felt nothing. A profound, unnerving calm. The Reeds all had a history of heart disease. The only one spared was their daughter, Catherine, who, ironically, had become one of the top cardiac surgeons in the country. Last time, when they collapsed, I dropped everything. I floored it, hitting 90 on the freeway to get them to City General, the hospital where Kate worked. I ran through the halls, shouting her name, but she was nowhere to be found. I had to call her. 100 calls, maybe more, before she finally picked up. Her childhood friend, Caleb Vance, had a ruptured appendix. She was scrubbing in. I told her what was happening, my voice cracking as I begged her to save them. She handed Caleb off to an intern. Her family made a full recovery. But Caleb died. A simple appendectomy. When Kate heard the news, she went silent for a long time. Then she turned to me, her face a mask, and said, "As long as my family is okay, that's all that matters." She was lying. She pinned Caleb's death squarely on me. She broke my legs and made me kneel at his grave. Thinking of her eyes, filled with pure, undiluted hatred, and the agony that followed, a chill runs down my spine even now. I don't know how long I sat there before a doctor approached, his face grim. He shook his head. "I'm very sorry," he sighed. "We did everything we could. We couldn't save any of them. You'll need to sign the death certificates." I glanced at the three sheet-covered figures, a faint smile touching my lips. As I signed the paperwork, I could hear the nurses behind me whispering, "How tragic to lose 3 family members at once. And it's just his in-laws. Where's the wife? Aren't they her parents? So cold." Their hushed words reached my ears. They had no idea that the cold, absent daughter was their own star surgeon, Dr. Kate Reed. After finishing the paperwork, I sat on a bench outside the morgue. I pulled out my phone and saw a new post from Kate on Instagram. It was a picture of her and Caleb. He was lying in a hospital bed, pale from the surgery, while Kate, holding a bouquet of flowers, beamed at the camera, her smile wider and brighter than any I had ever seen directed at me. The caption read, "It was just a minor surgery, but it was a success. You being okay is the greatest gift." I stared at the photo, lost in thought. Had she ever smiled at me like that? I couldn't remember. The comments were already flooding in. One of her friends had written, "You two are perfect together. Just move City Hall over and get married already." I looked at the comment, then tapped the little heart icon next to it. I even added a reply of my own. "Seriously, make sure you invite me to the wedding." After that, I attached the divorce papers I'd already had drawn up and sent them to her in a text. My phone immediately blew up with her call. "Ethan, what the hell is this?" she spat. "I post one picture celebrating Caleb's recovery, and you throw a tantrum and demand a divorce. Why are you so damn insecure? Always jealous over nothing." Chapter 2. Even through the phone, I could picture her face contorted with rage. "You've misunderstood," I said calmly. "I decided on this a long time ago. I'm just letting you know." I didn't wait for a response. I just hung up. Next, I called the crematorium and arranged for them to pick up the bodies. As a final courtesy, I sent Kate a text telling her what I'd done. Whether she read it or not wasn't my problem. She didn't get home until late that night. The moment she walked in the door, she laid into me. I already told you at the hospital, I was just happy for a friend. It was just a post. Why are you so paranoid? And now you want a divorce over it. I'm not paranoid, I said, my voice flat. I just want you to be happy. After all, everyone says you and Caleb are perfect for each other, right? Kate seemed stunned. She'd never heard me speak to her like this. Before my rebirth, I was always the one to back down, to apologize, to placate her. I never used sarcasm or pushback. The mention of Caleb's name made her flinch, but she recovered quickly. Do you have any idea how many surgeries I have in a day? She snapped, her tone dripping with impatience. It's one thing for you to sit around doing nothing all day, but can you please not invent problems? A woman who orbits entirely around her childhood friend, claiming to be swamped with work. Her parents have been turned to ash, and she was accusing me of inventing problems. I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. How had I never noticed what a phenomenal liar she was? Kate, I'm not kidding, I said, my voice firm. I want a divorce. She stared at me for a few seconds, the reality of the situation finally starting to sink in. Her expression softened, her eyes darting away nervously. Okay, look, she said, her tone softening. I was too harsh just now. She paused, then pulled out her phone. A moment later, mine buzzed. A Venmo notification. $500. I sent you some money, she said, as if tossing a bone to a dog. If you're really that bored, take my parents and my sister on a little trip. Get out of the city for a while. Can we just let this go? The casual dismissal, the sheer obliviousness of it all, was almost comical. She had no idea her family was already gone. I just smiled faintly. Seeing that I wasn't responding, her patience evaporated. She stormed into the bedroom and came out dragging a suitcase. As she walked out the door, she shot me a look of pure contempt. Instead of wasting your time being jealous, maybe you should think about why you'll never measure up to Caleb. For starters, he isn't a petty, insecure child. I'm staying at the hospital for a few days so you can cool off. Don't call me unless it's an emergency. She slammed the door so hard the walls shook. Chapter 3. The next day, I went to work. I hired a service to turn the old family house into a memorial. I wanted it to be big, obnoxious. 3 people dying from simultaneous heart attacks was so freakishly unlucky that even the funeral planners seemed unnerved. I made sure the display was spectacular. Huge wreaths, massive portraits, the works. Neighbors started gathering on the lawn, whispering amongst themselves. What happened to the wreaths? It was so sudden. What I found strange was that despite the massive commotion I was creating at the house, I heard nothing from Kate. Until I got a text from my friend, Mark. It was a series of photos. Dude, I saw your wife checking into the Westin last night with some guy. I'm not kidding, it was definitely her. They were. Mark trailed off, clearly uncomfortable. I swiped through the pictures. It was Kate and Caleb Vance, clear as day, standing at the hotel's check-in counter. I smiled coldly. We weren't even divorced, yet she was already shacking up with him. No wonder she said she was staying at the hospital. I saved the photos and immediately called a real estate agent. With her parents and sister gone, and with Kate Ann I still legally married, their estate was now marital property. When we first got married, Kate had refused to live in the new condo I bought. She spent most of her time at her parents' house, only coming to my place when it was absolutely necessary. When I complained, she'd always give me the same excuse. My family has a history of heart problems. It's better if I'm close by to take care of them. At first, I believed she was being a devoted daughter. It wasn't until much later that I learned the real reason. Caleb Vance lived just a few blocks away from her family's home. She just wanted to be closer to him. What surprised me wasn't Kate's silence about the funeral, but her immediate reaction the moment she heard about the house. The second the for sale sign went up, my phone rang. Ethan, what did you do? You're selling my parents' house. Where are they supposed to live? Ethan, what did you do? Her voice was so shrill it cracked. On my end, the memorial service I'd arranged was in full swing, with somber music blasting from speakers on the lawn. It was almost hard to hear her. I need the money, I said casually, and since you don't want a divorce, the house is marital property. Perfectly legal for me to sell it, right? My parents aren't even dead, and you're already trying to cash in on their assets. You really are a piece of work, Ethan. She screamed one last thing before hanging up. It didn't take long. A few hours later, a car screeched to a halt in front of the house. Kate jumped out, with Caleb right behind her. She froze when she saw the scene. The house draped in white mourning banners, the massive portraits of her smiling parents and sister on the lawn, the crowd of hired mourners I'd paid to look somber. Her face went white, then a furious, blotchy red. A piercing shriek cut through the air, silencing the memorial music. The hired mourners all turned to stare at her, confused. Chapter 4. Kate was shaking with rage. If Caleb hadn't been holding her up, she would have collapsed. I glanced at her, unimpressed, then turned to the coordinator of the service. "Don't stop," I said. "Keep going." The music started up again, even louder this time. Kate, her face a mask of fury, stomped across the lawn in her designer heels, kicking over flower arrangements and tearing down wreaths. "Enough! Stop it! I'm calling the cops for disturbing the peace," she screamed like a madwoman. The music finally died down again as the funeral staff exchanged uneasy glances. They were looking at Kate with open disapproval. I told them that the woman who might show up was the family's sole surviving child. For a daughter to come and desecrate her own family's memorial, it was inhuman. I hid a smile, watching her spectacular meltdown. This was just the beginning. She shooed everyone off the property, leaving the two of us alone in the house. Kate took a deep breath, raised her hand, and swung at my face. I caught her wrist easily. Her face turned a deep shade of crimson. "Are you insane?" she yelled. "First you sell my parents' house to force me to come back, and now you turn our home into this circus." I didn't argue. I simply pointed to the coffee table where the divorce papers were laid out. "You're here. Sign them." Kate froze for a second, her eyes landing on the documents. Then she let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. "Ethan, you've really outdone yourself. All of this just to force me into a divorce." She snatched the papers off the table and, with a vicious snarl, ripped them into tiny pieces. Her eyes then fell on the 3 ornate urns I had placed on the mantelpiece. As if the shredded paper wasn't enough, she stalked over and swiped them off the ledge. They shattered on the hearth, scattering a fine gray dust across the floor. I watched the ashes settle, my expression unreadable. For the first time, even I was taken aback by her capacity for destruction. "You smashed the urns," I said, my voice quiet. "Stop playing games with me," she shrieked. "What did you say to my parents? Did you bribe them to go along with this sick charade?" After her rampage, Kate seemed to regain a sliver of composure. She pushed past me and began searching the house, calling out for her parents and sister. After a full, fruitless lap, she returned, her face dark with frustration. "You didn't take them on a trip. Where are they?" she demanded, a hint of confusion finally creeping in her voice. I pointed nonchalantly toward the wall with the memorial portraits, then gestured to the dust on the floor. "They're right there." Kate still looked at me as if I was lying. I held up my phone. "You really should check your messages more often." Hours ago, I had sent her everything. The text message about the heart attacks, the official death certificates, signed and stamped. Her hands trembled as she finally opened our text thread. There, at the top, was the image I'd sent her, 3 official death certificates from City General Hospital. The color drained from her face. Chapter 5. But just as quickly, denial flooded back in. Kate took a deep, shuddering breath, her brow furrowed. "I'm not playing this game with you anymore, Ethan. My parents have always been decent to you. My sister is young. No matter how mad you are at me, you can't joke about something like this." She shook her head, as if trying to will it all away. "When they get back, you're going to have a lot of explaining to do." "I know you don't believe me," I said softly. "It's hard to accept losing your family so suddenly." I paused, letting the silence hang in the air. "That's why I took a video when I took them to the crematorium. I thought you might want to see them one last time. To say goodbye." I had recorded the moment their bodies were slid into the furnace. Their faces, gray and lifeless, were the unmistakable masks of death. As a doctor, Kate would know. She couldn't deny what she was seeing. I watched as her hand shook, her thumb swiping frantically at the screen, trying to find a glitch, a cut, anything to prove the video was fake. Her legs gave out, and she crumpled to the floor. My mind flashed back to the last life, to her kneeling over me as she shattered my leg bones, her phone recording every moment. to her grabbing my head and smashing it against Caleb's tombstone over and over. She had filmed that, too. "I'll call my mom," Kate stammered, her lips trembling. She'll answer." She fumbled with her phone, her fingers barely able to dial the number. But her mother's line had been disconnected the moment she was pronounced dead. The call went straight to an automated message. She tried her father, her sister. The same result. With a guttural scream of despair, Kate hurled her phone against the wall, where it shattered. She turned on me, her eyes wild with grief and rage. "Ethan, you monster! You killed them. It must have been you. Even with a heart attack, they got to the hospital in time. They could have been saved. Why didn't you tell me? I was right there at the hospital." Faced with her complete breakdown, I remained perfectly calm. Listening to her accusations, I let out a derisive laugh. In my last life, my compassion was what got me killed. Frankly, for a family of 4 to have 3 members with chronic heart conditions was just cosmic bad luck. Kate had dedicated her entire life to becoming a top cardiac surgeon precisely to save them. And now, she was the only one left. Your mom, your dad, your sister, they all called you, didn't they? I said, my voice like ice. But where were you, Kate? You were holding your childhood sweetheart's hand while he had his appendix out. Is City General so short-staffed that the chief of cardiac surgery has to perform an appendectomy? I brought your family in, I stayed with them while they died, and I signed the papers your own colleagues prepared. Where were you? We couldn't find you anywhere. With every word, the blood drained further from her face. She clawed at her hair, screaming, and began smashing everything within reach. Her eyes were bloodshot, tears streaming down her face. I'm calling the police, she hissed. It was you. You did this on purpose. You couldn't stand seeing me and Caleb together, so you let my family die. Chapter 6. The commotion finally drew Caleb in from outside. He saw Kate on the floor, a complete wreck, and immediately charged at me, ready to play the hero. His eyes were wide with righteous fury. I never should have let Kate marry you. If I hadn't been out of the country, you never would have had a chance. You finally get her, and this is how you treat her. You're not a man, Ethan. Seeing the two of them together, the injustice of my past life boiled over. I didn't hesitate. I drove my foot hard into Caleb's stomach. He doubled over, gasping, and fell to his knees. Kate scrambled to his side, cradling him like a wounded bird. The look she gave me now was one of pure murder. If you want to be her husband so badly, you should have married her, I sneered. You had no problem dumping her when it suited you, did you? I knew Caleb's type. When he'd broken up with Kate years ago, his party shot was the classic, cowardly line, I've only ever thought of you as a sister. He'd left her begging and pleading while he jetted off to Europe. By the time the police arrived, Kate was hysterical. She pointed a shaking finger at me, her voice choked with sobs. He's my husband. My parents, my sister. They're all dead. It can't be a coincidence. He killed them. The officer's eyes narrowed, suddenly thinking they'd stumbled onto a major homicide case. I wasn't worried. I calmly pulled one of the officers aside while Kate continued to rave. My wife. Her family had a history of heart trouble. She's the only one left. She's in shock, not thinking clearly. I've been trying to console her, and she's accusing me of murder. I gestured toward Caleb. And that guy over there, that's the man she's been cheating on me with. So here I am, being cheated on and now being framed for murder. It's been a rough day. The cop's expressions shifted from suspicion to something like pitying fascination, as if they'd just been handed the plot of a soap opera. But they were professionals, and they took both of us down to the station. At the precinct, Kate could do little more than repeat, he's a murderer, without a shred of evidence. After the police verified the cause of death with the hospital and listened to my calm, rational account, they ended up lecturing her for filing a false report. After that ordeal, Kate seemed to finally accept reality. She stopped fighting me and began quietly arranging a proper funeral service for her family, even sending the prospective home buyers away. I thought she would finally sign the divorce papers, but she decided to play dirty. She stood in front of me, pulled Caleb into a passionate, open-mouthed kiss, and then looked at me with defiant eyes. You want a divorce? Not happening. I'm going to make your life a living hell. I had to laugh at her shamelessness. I never knew she had this side to her. Fine. I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures, right in their faces. You two are so in love. I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. I should post this online. Let everyone see what the country's top cardiac surgeon is really like. Just another cheater who can't keep her hands to herself. Kate's face darkened. She lunged for my phone. She valued her public image above all else. You don't want a divorce? Fine with me, I continued. But since your parents and sister are gone, their entire estate is marital property. If you won't let me sell the house, you could just buy me out. Give me my half. The word estate made her pause. The realization hit her, and she roared, Don't you dare, Ethan. You won't get a single penny of my family's money. You want a divorce so bad? Fine, you'll get it, but don't come crawling back. Everyone knows you practically begged me to marry you in the first place. I clenched my jaw, saying nothing. She had always wanted a fairy tale wedding, to be treated like a princess. To satisfy her, I had gotten down on one knee at the altar to place the ring on her finger. At the time, her eyes had filled with tears, and I thought I had truly moved her. Thinking about it now makes my skin crawl. I wish I could go back in time and slap my former self across the face. This time, Kate didn't hesitate. She snatched a pen and signed her name on a new copy of the divorce papers. Should have brought up the money sooner. The estate doesn't matter, I said, tucking the signed papers away. I have proof of your infidelity. According to the law, you'll have to compensate me in the divorce settlement. The smug look on Kate's face, so pleased at having saved her inheritance, instantly vanished. She glared at me. Is that all you care about? The money. As if, after the hell I went through in my last life, there was no way I was walking away from this one empty-handed. I didn't waste any more words. I just showed her the photos Mark had sent me from the hotel. The timestamp was clearly visible. You told me you were on call, swamped with work. Did that work happen to be in a king-size bed at the Westin? Kate's face went pale. She opened her mouth to argue, but Caleb cut her off, wrapping a protective arm around her shoulders. Kate, so what if he has those pictures? In this day and age, anyone can fake a photo. We're childhood friends. Our relationship is special. What's the big deal? He said smoothly. He leaned in, whispering in her ear. Divorce him. I can give you everything he can't. A blush crept up Kate's neck. Her eyes filled with adoration for her white knight. She turned back to me, her expression cold and distant. When a mandatory waiting period is over, bring the marriage certificate. I took my copy of the agreement and nodded sharply. Chapter 7. The day the divorce was finalized, my friends took me out to celebrate my freedom. They'd all hated Kate, watching as I gave up my social life to become a glorified stay-at-home husband, tending to her parents' needs while they looked down on me. Seeing them all again, I felt a pang of guilt for having shut them out. They took me to Obsidian Lounge, the most exclusive club in the city, joking that it was time to recalibrate my vision with some beautiful women. Your problem, man, is you had blinders on, Mark said, sliding a whiskey toward me. Kate isn't even that hot. She's just successful. We never understood your obsession. We're your boys. We've known you for 15 years, another friend added. If you were happy, we wouldn't have said a thing. But you weren't. A few drinks in, the old camaraderie returned, and the awkwardness of the lost years melted away. I remembered how they had all tried to warn me before I married Kate. They told me a guy like Caleb doesn't just disappear. They said he'd be back, and that their friendship would reignite. Turns out everyone could see it, but me. It took Dinah to finally open my eyes. I just shook my head, laughing grimly as I downed my drink. In a lull in the conversation, we heard some commotion from the VIP booth next to ours. A woman's giggling, a man slurred words. Mark's eyes went wide. He nudged me hard, pointing with his chin. Holy crap. Look, I followed his gaze. And there he was, Caleb Vance, draped over by 3 women in dresses that left little to the imagination. He was clearly wasted, kissing one of them sloppily while his hands roamed over the others. People at the surrounding tables were actively trying to ignore them. I thought he was a choir boy, one of my friends whispered, his jaw on the floor. Didn't he and Kate just get married? I heard it was this huge, expensive wedding. What money? I snorted. Caleb didn't spend a dime. That was all Kate, using her inheritance. After our divorce, Kate had practically dragged Caleb to the courthouse. They were married so fast, the clerk who processed their license raised an eyebrow. I smirked, raised my phone, and zoomed in. I took several pictures and a long, damning video. My friends watched, confused, until I addressed the video to Kate and hit send. Then they all grinned, raising their glasses to me. Kate was probably working, so I knew she wouldn't see the message right away. I gave her a call. She picked up almost instantly, her voice dripping with smug satisfaction. I knew you'd regret this, Ethan, but it's too late. Caleb and I are married now, and I've never been happier. He treats me so well. Not like you, who only ever made me miserable. Chapter 8. I didn't even have a chance to speak before she launched into her victory speech, emphasizing the word happy as if it were a weapon. My friends, hearing her side of the conversation, burst out laughing. I glanced over at Caleb, who was now trying to drunkenly pull one of the women onto his lap, and nodded sagely into the phone. I know you're very happy, I said, but I didn't call to hear all about it. I sent you a message. You should probably look at it. I hung up. As expected, it wasn't long before she texted back, demanding my location. Isn't anyone going to stop this? One of my friends muttered, gesturing at the scene next to us. That's basically public indecency. This place is filthy, I agreed, pulling on my phone again. This time, I dialed 911. Let's get some professionals over here to clean it up. Kate arrived just in time to see Caleb, wearing nothing but his boxer shorts, being slapped into a pair of handcuffs. Another scantily clad woman was being questioned beside him. Even from across the room, I could see the look of utter devastation on Kate's face. It was a deeper, more profound despair than when she learned her entire family was dead. She stumbled toward Caleb, grabbing his arm. Her voice was a raw, broken whisper. This isn't real, right? Why would you do this to me? We just got married. But the charming, gentle Caleb was gone. The man who looked back at her was a stranger, his face twisted with irritation. I just did what you've been doing for years, he sneered. Why are you whining about it now? And let's be honest, Kate. I came back to this city to find a rich woman to bankroll me. I never wanted to get married. If your parents hadn't conveniently died and left you that inheritance, you think I'd want damaged goods like you? Kate staggered back as if he'd physically struck her, her eyes wide with horror. She watched, motionless, as the police led him away. As the spectacle died down, my friends and I got up to leave. But before we could go, Kate saw me. A spark of life returned to her eyes, quickly replaced by a familiar, venomous hatred. You're happy now, aren't you? She spat, her voice trembling with rage. See me like this. None of this would have happened if it weren't for you. You called the police, didn't you? You just can't stand to see me happy, can you, Ethan? I looked down at the pathetic woman kneeling on the floor of the club. What? Did I make him take his pants off? I replied, my voice cold. Did I force him to cheat on you? Don't blame me for your own mess. You're the one who's blind. Maybe you should have one of your colleagues at the hospital check your eyes. Or maybe you should just learn to shut your mouth instead of spraying poison everywhere. Kate flinched, and finally, the dam broke. She began to sob, deep, wrenching gulps of air. Anyone watching would have thought I was the one bullying her. You were never like this before, she cried. You used to be so good to me. Why did you change? Even when I made mistakes, you were never this cruel. Because I used to be blind, I said, looking her dead in the eye. And you just asked if I was happy seeing you like this. I let a slow, deliberate smile spread across my face. I'm loving every second of it. After that night, I cut all ties with Kate. For what I heard through mutual acquaintances, she wasn't doing well. Her family was dead, and the man she'd sacrificed everything for had scammed her out of her inheritance. It was exactly the kind of news I enjoyed hearing. I saw her again by chance months later. I was driving home from work and saw a huge crowd gathered in front of City General Hospital. My curiosity got the better of me. People were holding signs, big white banners with angry red letters. Negligent doctor must pay. Dr. Kate Reed has blood on her hands. Justice for our family. At the front of the crowd was an elderly woman, clutching a framed photograph to her chest. She was wailing, tears streaming down her face, demanding that Kate come out and face her. I asked a man standing nearby what was going on. It's a real tragedy, he said, shaking his head. That old woman's son and daughter-in-law died in a car crash years ago. No settlement or anything. They left behind a son, and she raised that boy all by herself. The kid had a bad heart, so she saved up everything she had to bring him here to get the best, Dr. Reed. But 3 days after the surgery, the boy just died at home. The autopsy found a scalpel left inside his chest. Clear case of malpractice. Kate, the surgical prodigy, making a mistake that catastrophic? It seemed impossible, yet here was the proof. It was clear the hospital was trying to protect her, to sweep it under the rug. Just then, Kate emerged from the hospital entrance, followed by the hospital director. The media, who had been buzzing like flies, surged forward, cameras flashing in her face. The old woman saw her and lunged, grabbing the front of Kate's white coat. "It was her. She's the one who killed my grandson," the woman shrieked. "A scalpel that long. She just left it inside him. I came all the way from the countryside. I trusted her to save him. You're a doctor. You kill someone and you won't even admit it. Give me back my grandson." The grandmother's cries were heartbreaking. Every eye was on Kate. Just as my friends had said, she looked terrible. Her hair was a mess. Her eyes were wild and unfocused. She looked like she was on the verge of a complete psychotic break. The fact that the hospital was still letting her operate was criminally negligent. "Surgery always has risks. I'm not a god." Kate suddenly screamed, her voice cracking under the pressure. "If your grandson died, it was just his fate." I couldn't believe it. She just confessed in front of a dozen news cameras. She had clearly given up. She was broken. Her words ignited the crowd's fury. People started shouting, their faces contorted with anger. Kate, who had never experienced this kind of public scorn, took a step back, a flicker of regret in her eyes. I pushed my way through the crowd and stepped forward. When Kate saw me, her eyes widened in panic. "Ethan, what are you doing?" she hissed. "Don't make this worse." The crowd quieted, curious about the newcomer. I ignored Kate's pleading gaze. In my last life, I had pleaded with her too. She hadn't listened. Now it was time for her to atone. "I am Dr. Reed's ex-husband," I announced, my voice clear and steady. "And there are a few things you all need to know. This wasn't just a mistake. 6 months ago, her mother, my mother-in-law, had a massive heart attack. I rushed her to this very hospital. But Kate, the country's top cardiac surgeon, wasn't available to save her own mother. Why? Because she was performing a routine appendectomy on her childhood friend. Her mother died on the operating table. When I told her father and sister the news, they tried to call her over and over. She never picked up. The Reeds all had a history of heart disease. The shock of the news sent her father and sister into cardiac arrest as well. They both died. And where was Kate, the loving daughter and sister? She was posting smiling selfies with her lover on Instagram, celebrating his successful surgery. This woman has no ethics. She is not a doctor. She is a murderer. As I spoke, I airdropped the videos and screenshots I had saved to everyone in the crowd with an open connection. A wave of gasps and angry murmurs rippled through the onlookers as they saw the evidence on their phones. Some healer. How can they even call her a doctor? Murderer. She's a murderer. The chants grew louder. The hospital director, who had been trying to protect Kate, now looked pale and uncertain. He slowly backed away, leaving her to face the mob alone. Her attempts to defend herself were drowned out by the roar of public outrage. But what made her despair complete was when her own colleagues began to step forward. "I can verify what he's saying," a young resident said, his voice shaking but firm. When Dr. Reed's parents died, her husband was the one who handled all the paperwork. She never once showed up. "I saw her being inappropriately close with a patient on multiple occasions," another nurse added. She even took him with her on conferences. With each new testimony, the camera flashes intensified. Kate stood frozen in the spotlight, her eyes empty, all hope gone. The reporters swarmed her. "Dr. Reed, you once said that you became a doctor to save your family, as you were the only one without a heart condition. Where were you when they died? You're known as a surgical prodigy who promised to be responsible for every patient. Will you take responsibility for this medical accident?" Kate couldn't form a single word. She looked up, her gaze finding mine, a look of utter incomprehension on her face. She still didn't understand why I would do this, how the man who once loved her so much could be so determined to destroy her. And at that exact moment, Caleb Vance arrived. He was probably there to see Kate, but he froze, stunned by the chaotic scene. The sight of him was the final trigger for Kate. All the remaining sanity she possessed snapped. With a blood-curdling scream, she launched herself at him, her hands clawing for his throat. "Why are you here?" she shrieked, her voice a mangled sob. "If it wasn't for you, I could have saved my mother. If you hadn't done those disgusting things, I wouldn't have been so distracted. I wouldn't have killed that boy. You used my pictures to threaten me. You bastard. You deserve to die." From her fragmented screams, the full story came tumbling out. Caleb had been released from jail the day before. He had come to the hospital to blackmail Kate with intimate photos, demanding the rest of her inheritance. He had been harassing her with threatening texts all morning. That's why she was distracted. That's why she'd made the fatal mistake. I watched as the two of them clawed and fought on the ground, a fitting end to their toxic story. Kate was finally paying the price for her betrayal. Once hailed as a medical marvel, Kate Reed became a pariah overnight. The victim's family refused any settlement, vowing to see her in prison. The story went viral, and when my part in it came out, public sympathy was squarely on my side. My friends called to ask me how I felt. I just smiled. She got what she deserved. I told them. Kate was always an expert at making excuses for herself. A person like that is a cancer in the medical profession. Better to have her locked away. In the end, Kate was prosecuted. Caleb, for his part in the blackmail, faced his own charges. I touched my legs, feeling the solid bone beneath the skin. I was grateful for this second chance. Using the knowledge from my past life, I invested in real estate that I knew would skyrocket in value. I sold it for a massive profit and used the capital to start a tech company with a few old friends who share my vision. For the rest of my life, I would live for myself.